Just let me know when you're ready.
Anytime you're ready.
Oh, you got it going now? I see. Well, my name is প্ৰভぁand I am a member of the Bear Clan of the Mohawk Nation. I have been placed by the clan mothers and the people of the Bear Clan of the Mohawk Nation as one of the sub-leaders or spiritual leaders of that clan. The Mohawk Nation has 9 men leaders and 9 women leaders. The men leaders are called န့တွինዀ, which interpreted directly into English means they who are of the nice, is our term for our leader. The women leaders are called န့တွինዀლა, or the mothers, or clan mothers. And it is our leaders that is supposed to protect and are protecting it to the best of our abilities, considering the circumstances of which we find ourselves in a society that is very complicated and leads to much frustrations in these days. But we have knowledge that was passed down from our grandfathers and their grandfathers before them, they say, since the time when the world was new. The word that sometimes the Western society calls us, they would refer to us as chiefs, but the word chief isn't very proper in our culture or the way we understand English. It's kind of contradictory in a sense, because our roles as leaders is of the nature that it is truly representative of the people. But when you say chief in Western terms, one right away tends to think of a head person or a person that has the final say, or a ruler type of a thing. And that isn't a very good interpretation for one to understand a leader should be. The traditions, the spiritual rituals, the governmental rituals that our people hold on to today comes from many thousands of years ago. And in our understanding from our elders, that the leaders are both our spiritual leaders as well as they are our political leaders. We do not separate the two, because our older people, our grandfathers and grandmothers, have told us that when the Creator created the world, the Creator placed His hand upon the entire world, and thus doing so, the world became a spiritual, sacred place. And in the knowledges of our ancestors to the times of our people that exist today, we have never been instructed by our elders that the Creator ever separated the world into a world in a time when politics will occur, and in another time, in another part of the world, where religious or spiritual will occur. But in fact, that the whole world in the universe is of a spiritual, sacred nature, and our leaders must stand on that grounds when they make decisions or advice for the welfare of the people. And so that is why our leaders amongst the Mohawk Nation, their first duty is to attend to the spiritual ceremonials of the 1-year cycle. And when 1-year cycle has been completed, they will continue into the new year, the forthcoming year, and it is a continuous cycle of many cycles, which protects and secures and gives us a sense of belonging in the universe. So, to sum it up, our first duties of our leaders is spiritual, and to attend to the needs of our people, which you might term political, but we don't separate those. So when our leader sits in council, it is said by our elders that the decisions that we will make in that council, be it today or tomorrow, the words that precedes the council is a prayer we call the Thanksgiving address, or the words that come before all issues or matters will be spoken, and there we are reminded that the decisions that we will be making today will affect 7 generations into the future. And so the decisions we make today, we must make sure that those decisions do not disrupt or jeopardize or harm our great-great-great-grandchildren 7 generations down the road. And so the leaders amongst the Mohawk Nation have a very heavy duties that they must attend to. When the Creator placed the humans on the earth, when the world was newly created, the Creator said, I placed everything upon the earth, and this earth you shall call your mother, because the Creator has empowered or invested great power to this Mother Earth, and instructed the earth that she will be the mother, and she will support all life, animal life, human life, bird life, reptile life, insect life, whatever life that there is in the world. Mother Earth will feed that life and support that life. And so today, Mother Earth is still doing that. Mother Earth is still providing everything that we eat, everything that we need, as she was instructed by the Creator. And so the Mohawk people, we have ceremonies of gratitude and thanksgiving to our Mother Earth, which supports our feet as we walk upon this Mother Earth. The Creator also said, I place on this earth, this Mother Earth, I place here all things that you will need to survive, to have peace in your mind. The peace will be amongst you. It's all there. If you shall get hungry, there's a lot of berries planted all over, different herbs and foods that has been planted by this power of the Creator that Mother Earth allows to grow. If you get hungry and you feel the pain of hunger in your stomach, all you need to do is pick those and your pain of hunger will go away. He says, I have placed these rivers and waters and streams upon the Mother Earth. They are living. They have a soul and a spirit. They are full of life. And it is a matter of fact that the human beings cannot go for many days without the drinking of water from those streams and those lakes and those springs. For those water does exist with life, and without them we would perish. And so there is an interdependence. Maybe more, we are dependent on the water and all the other life forms that the Creator has planted here. And so our religious ear in the Mohawk Nation, who are a member of the 5 or 6 nations called the Haudenosaunee, still practice and still put through those series of spiritual rituals every year, and they consist of gratitude, thanksgiving to all life forms, and a gratitude that we have made it this far, this day, since the beginning of time. And so we were instructed that all the world is like a family. It starts with a woman and starts with a man. They have children, and their children has children, and the mother and father became a grandmother and a grandfather. And when their grandchildren have children, they become grandmothers, great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers. from there becomes the nieces and nephews and cousins and brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles. And so we look, the Creator has instructed us to look at the entire universe as being that of a family, a strong, healthy, well-being family. And that is why in our understanding, spiritual understanding of the world that affects the basis of which we walk this earth today, even irregardless of all the technology that is so contradictory to the philosophy that makes the Indian people's being today. This family of the universe, I will describe generally to you what we mean. First, the earth is our mother, and we look at the rivers like they were uncles. And the Mississippi River, we call it the leader or the eldest of rivers. We call it the grandfather, the Mississippi River. We look at the sun that shines every day in the sky and that is shining today as our eldest brother. And being an elder brother, he must look out for his younger brothers, of which we are. And he will protect, he will shine the light and give the necessary power that we may live and that we may have health. Then we were told by our ancestors and our grandfathers, and that knowledge is protected in our hearts today, that the moon, we call it the nighttime sun, she is our grandmother, the head of all women. And because she is our grandmother and the leader of all women, it was placed in her power or in her hands by the Creator that she will determine when children will be conceived, when offspring will be born, by animal, by human, by all life form that walks the earth. Also, our grandmother has been given the power in her hands, the big gardens of the world that produces the food that is necessary for our livelihood and strength. It is her that controls the gardens that are in the woods, that are in the swamps and in the fields, anything that grows, that bears fruit. Grandmother Moon controls those. We are also told by our ancestors that our grandmother Moon has been given the power to raise and to lower the salt waters of the earth. And though she does that yet today, and because we've seen our children and little babies born yet, it means that our grandmother has never betrayed the Creator, has never let the Creator down, or we, the grandchildren, down. Because the new babies was born, Grandmother Moon's mind is strong as when the day was new of the earth. And so it is that way that we look at it. The wind that comes from the west, we call it our grandfather, the thunder. And the thunder grandfather, they are spiritual symbolic beings who live in the west. And they were instructed by the Creator that they will have a duty to perform. And so the Creator said to the grandfather thunderers that all the humans will be the grandchildren. And you will take care of your grandchildren and advise your grandchildren and attend to their every needs. And so the grandfather thunderer was given the duty that he will make his voice run across the sky every now and then. We will hear the drums of the thunder to secure that we will become alert. And grandfather was told that he shall bring brand new water, fresh water, to put into the lakes, into the rivers, into the springs, so there will always be a fresh supply of fresh water. Grandfather will also quench the thirst of Mother Earth and all of the children that you and I that roam about on this Mother Earth. And so grandfather does his purifying and quenching of thirst of all life. And so our Mohawk people and all Iroquois Haudenosaunee people, we have ceremonies of gratitude to our grandfather, the thunderers, for they still follow in their instructions, and because they do, our thirst is always quenched, and we are purified. And so that is why we give greetings and we give gratitude to our grandfather thunderers, for they still follow the Creator's wishes and duties of this world. We have all this knowledge of these things that were passed down by our elders to us. And they always told us that the Creator has put everything theirs right on the Mother Earth. They will bring peace and continuance of everlasting life. You will have children, and they will carry on your life, your flesh and your blood, and then they will have children. And so it will be that the world will be everlasting, like a sacred circle that will have no end. It will be everlasting as long as you always respect all the life forms that the Creator has made. You respect the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, the springs, and they will continue to respect you, and they will continue to give you life. You will always respect the grandfather of the four winds, and they will always likewise respect you and give you fresh water and aid you in your life. You will always respect everything of the sun and the sky areas, the stars. You will respect the forest and the trees, because they too are living, the animals. You will take only what you need, and you will not gather and accumulate, only just enough to get through the cold winters, when the grandfather wind of the north puts his white blanket of snow upon Mother Earth, so that she may sleep and rest and prepare for springtime. When the grandfather wind of the south will remove the white blanket of snow, and Mother Earth will wake up after a good rest, and all the little tiny green sprouts will come up here and there, and then in a matter of few days, beautiful flowers will appear, and the smell of fragrance of beautiful flowers will be all over. Our children will take off their heavy clothes. They will run around. They will swim. Grandfathers was good. The Creator's helpers are good. The Creator's word is good. Again, we give thanks to the Creator and to the grandfathers and to all that makes and gives us life, that contributes to our very existence. That is what our understanding of the universe is. And so we find ourselves which still attempt to follow those instructions, because if those instructions are followed, we will have a continuous life. The world will continue forever. But if we detour from those instructions and we do not respect the life of the waters and rivers and lakes, if we do not respect the grandfathers of the sky world that brings us the thunder and the rain, if we do not respect the wind, then the circle of life will end. It will not continue, and humanity will cease to exist. For those forces of nature that are the very powers of the Creator will become dissatisfied and disrespectful of those of us who are to respect them, and there we will cease. When people here in North America was instructed how they were to live and given the different spiritual rituals of which we are supposed to fulfill and live accordingly. After some years, many centuries had passed, the life was very peaceful and everything was going very well. But something happened in all of the Indian world which caused confusion, and sorrow began to be very prevalent all over. And it seems like this not only happened in the Indian world of North and South America, but it seems to have occurred all over the entire world. even though we did not know about those things that occurred in the other parts of the world. Wars took place amongst our people here in the North America and South America, and people sought revenge, and there was murder and killing going on every day. The blood stained this Mother Earth so many times, and the mothers lost many sons in battles and wars. And so this was going on, it seemed like, with no end. So the Creator must have been feeling quite sorrowful that the people who he had instructed how to live in a peaceful, continuous life detoured from that instruction and that road. And so the Creator saw it fit to be born amongst our people. Maybe you would call a Messiah or a messenger. And this messenger was born in a Huron country, about maybe 120 miles from this very place where we're sitting right now, called at the Bay of Quinte. He was a Huron, and he was born, and he possessed unnatural powers, and with his powers he was able to congregate people all the time with the greatest of ease. People just would gather around him at every opportunity, and just to hear him, just to listen to his talk. Even as a small child, he was that way. This man that was born, or this baby that was born, grew quickly and performed what you might call miracles before the people. He was only about 12 or 13 years old when he set out on his mission. And he was born by the will of the creation, or the Creator, to bring about a new way of life, or to reestablish the old life of peace, unity, and well-being amongst the men, amongst the people, and of the nations. So he had a very big job on his hands, because war and bloodshed and ferocious attitudes towards one another existed so greatly. Amongst the worst of those Indian people, it is said the Mohawks were the worst, the most ferocious, the most unhuman in their manners and attitudes. It is said that the Mohawk took on a road of cannibalism. It was so bad. And so when this man was born, he has a name of which our elders tell us not to say, because it is a spiritual understanding that one day that name will be called. And so we are not to use that name from day to day in normal conversations. Only specific times under very spiritual guidance. This man, this baby that was born, we call him, instead of his regular name, the PeaceMaker. They say he made a canoe out of granite, white granite, which defied the very laws of logic. But it was a miracle to show to the people that they may have their attention towards his being. So he completed the canoe of white granite, and he made it float, and the people were astounded. A miraculous thing they seen. And so he journeyed from the Algonquin country a little over 1,000 years ago, they say, maybe more, to the land of the Mohawks. And there he called upon the Mohawk people. And the Mohawk people, when they listened to him, normally they probably would have killed him right away, just as look at him. But he was, they say, the most greatest specimen of a human being. His features and his looks and just the very sight of him was so beautiful and handsome that what you would normally think of doing, you would just detract your mind would be detracted. Instead, admiration would fulfill your mind of his wonderful being. Thus was his nature and his power. But even though he possessed those powers, those spiritual powers, just by his very sight, the Mohawk people, though astounded, still remained cruel. And when the Peacemaker told them that he was sent to the people that dwell on the earth to replace their evil ways with ways of peace, joy, happiness, and good life, the Mohawk people told him, "Who do you think you are, saying that you are representing the Creator, His will? Any man can say that." And so they didn't believe him. And so the Peacemaker himself, he told the Mohawks, this was in the Mohawk Valley next to present-day Albany, New York, where we used to live in the old homelands of the Mohawk villages. There was a gorge or a river that ran at the bottom of a gorge. They say it was about 100 foot high. And on the bank of this gorge, way up, there was a big tree that grew. And so the Peacemaker said to the Mohawks, "I will show you some things that will help you understand that the Creator indeed did send me here." And so he presented to the Mohawks this offer. He said, "I shall climb to the highest branch of this tree that is at the edge of this gorge. And there I shall perch myself on the top of that tree. And you, the people of the Mohawk, will cut the tree down, and you shall cause it to fall into the gorge, of which at the base there were sharp stones, that there was nothing that was living that could survive. And there you will not have to worry about me any longer, or if what I say is the truth or not." So the Mohawks said, "Good, that is what we will do." So he commenced to climb up there, and he sat up there. And the Mohawk people gathered grass and straws and dried stuff and put it around the base of the tree, for that was the way people cut tree down at that time. They burned it. Finally the tree fell. It went way down, and the man went with it. So finally the Mohawk people said, "Well, there's a fool. We won't have to worry about him any longer.
Yes, sir.
He's gone now. We don't have to concern ourselves with him anymore." Well,
Yes, I can.
they returned to their homes or to their longhouses. The next morning when they woke up early in the morning, they seen a white smoke at the edge of the village that was ascending towards the sky, which at that time was the custom. Whenever you go to another village, you never enter the village directly. You will place yourself outside in a camp, and you will raise a white smoke. And when the people within the village sees the smoke, they will understand that you are asking for admittance into the village. And so the next morning they seen that white smoke raising up. And so the war leaders of that time, they said, they sent a delegation to go. There must be a visitor from some place. And so they went out there, and there this man was sitting. The man that had been sitting on top of the tree that was supposed to have been killed. by the fall into the gorge. And there was something strange about this man. The old people said he parted his hair in the middle. Half of his hair was white and the other half was black hair. And upon seeing him, they were very amazed, because they had indeed seen a miracle take place. And so they greeted him, this time with a different attitude, this time with admiration and a willingness to accept the messages that he carried. So they proceeded to take him into the village to meet with the leaders, the war leaders, for there were no peace leaders at that time. And the people rejoiced at this miracle. And the Mohawk people at that time said, "Now we shall listen what you are to say to us. We will receive the words that you say the Creator is sending with belief, and we shall embrace those ways." So he proceeded to establish the clans that we know follow yet today. The very clans that he established are the clans that we hold to this day. He presented at that time the unity, the beginning of the unity of the man. And again he based it on the family, the extended family, the big family of the world. And he said at that time, you will have clan mothers, 9 of them, 9 men were leaders, and described and reminded us of our duties that was before told to us that we have neglected. And he added new things from the natural laws. He established the Mohawk nation, how we were to make our leaders, what kind of people you will look for leadership, and just generally some of those things. He said a leader must be married and have children before he can become a leader. There he will understand the sympathy and the feeling of kinfolks, family. There he will know responsibility, because the responsibility of a nation is great. A leader must be kind, must be ever given to his people. His time must be available day or night. His skin must be 7 spans of the hand thick, so that when people might throw a sharp words of criticism towards his heart, it will not penetrate, for his skin is 7 spans thick. He is never to anger at his people for whatever they do to him. He must always be of peace and kindness towards his people. His duties must to see first that the spiritual duties of the nation is fulfilled year after year until his death, and another will be replaced. He will become a leader for the rest of his life until he has passed this world, what you might call death. If this leader detours from the duties of his leadership and the people, then there was stipulation made by that Messiah, by that peacemaker, that that leader will be removed upon 3 warnings. But if the offense is great enough, there need not be 3 warnings. They will just remove him. And when they place this man up, into leadership, it is the women of the family, the large extended family of which he comes, who will place a deer antlers on his feathered hat, we call gastoa, on his head. The antlers will be seen from people far away, and they will know his duties and his leadership role And so the deer antlers is placed on his head as a symbol of his leadership, with all the other duties, and the rejoicement takes place. Condolences will be done for the previous leader that died. But if this leader acts contrary to the well-being of his people, the women who put him up as a leader, the women who chose him as the leader, they will speak to him first if he detours. And they will tell him of his importance in the eyes of his people, that he is to convey the words of those people to the smallest child, to the oldest grandfather or grandmother, that they have entrusted in him their care to lead them to the future, from day to next day, way into the future. And that the actions that he is doing, that it is contradictory to the establishment of his leadership. And they will ask him to please get back onto the road, to continue to have the admiration and the trust and the love of his people. He is much needed. And she will then go back to her business. Upon watching him, if he did not listen or heed the advice of the women, the clan mother, they will go speak with him again a second time. This time they will take the religious leaders or faith keepers, and they will talk to him again nicely and explain to him his importance in the world as a leader, remind him of the duties of his office or his position, and they will tell him and beg him to straighten up again. After days will have passed, the third time, if this leader continues to go about his own way, away from his people, this time the woman will not go there. The third time, she will get one of her nephews, who's a big one, whose heart is strong, and who will not bend or give in to the tears of a man. And she will send him with orders to remove the horns from the leader's head and bring the name of that chieftain title back. And we call it deposing or dehorning of a leader. That is the greatest shame that is known to men if that is to happen to a leader. They say that the blood that will bleed when the horns is removed, it's a symbolic, will stain his face and the entirety of his body, and the blood will go in his eyes, causing him to become blind and weak and sickly. And he will be told to leave the country of the Mohawks and to go about this Mother Earth and seek peace with people who thinks like he thinks, because he will never have peace in this village or in this nation, and the people will never have peace. So therefore we must separate and go on your way, and he will be outcasted. They call it the walking dead, the greatest shame and humiliation the world can know and bestow. From there they said his feet will be dangling from the edges of the world as known by man, and his fate is only in the mystery, the blackness of the creation, the Creator. But if a leader always does his duties accordingly, then he shall be that leader for the rest of his life. That is what leaders are in a native North America from the beginning over 1,000 years ago. They are truly for the people. They work for the people. and they represent the people. Now, from the Mohawks, they went over to the Oneidas, and they put 9 leaders up there, 9 women, 9 men. Then they went over to the Cayugas, put 10 of them up there, to the Cayuga Nation. Then they went to the Seneca Nation and put up 8 leaders. Then lastly they went to the Onondagas and they put 14 leaders. And the Creator explained through this man that was born called the PeaceMaker how man must relate to another man, how people must conduct their businesses between each others. The peace must be the format of their existence. How you will counsel in a grand council of nations for the ways of peace. He said of the leaders, your job will always be to attend to the well-being of the minds of men. You will counsel for 7 generations amongst the great assembly of the Haudenosaunee or Park Nations, commonly known throughout the world as 6 nations today. When the assembly is sitting in council, it is broken up in this manner. The Mohawk Nation, the Onondaga Nation, and the Seneca Nation are known as the older brothers. The Cayugas and the Oneida Nation together are known as the younger brothers. In the seating of the Grand Council of these nations, in the middle of the long house in Onondaga, there is a fire in the middle, which symbolically divides the house into 2 houses. The younger brother house and the older brother house. On one side of the sacred fire sits the Mohawk and Seneca nations, who comprise one side of the house. On the other side of the sacred fire sits the Cayuga and Oneida nations, known as the younger brother house. At the head of this sacred fire sits the leaders of the Onondaga Nation, of which they, the Onondaga leaders, do not participate in the debates or the discussions of the formation of the laws directly. As these issues and matters go across the sacred fire, searching for a unanimous decision, consensus decision, the Onondaga leaders only listen and watch the progress of the formation of this law. They do not become part of it immediately. They are in this process objectively watching. You might say their position, the Onondaga firekeeper and their leaders, they are like a judicial branch of the actual process where they watch and listen. When this law is being created, it must be agreed upon by all of the older brother house, known as the Seneca Nation and Mohawk Nation leaders. The Cayuga and Oneida leaders, known as the younger brother house, must also all agree, every one of them. And when both houses has agreed, then it is thrown to the head of the council fire, the law that is before the council, to be affirmed and confirmed by the Onondaga leaders. And when they confirm it, they all must confirm it, all the leaders. So it must be a complete unanimous decision by all the nations. And that then becomes the law of the land. That is the way the laws was made here in North America, 1,000 and maybe better years ago, way before the arrival of Europeans here in North America.
As a clerk.
Now, when the PeaceMaker established this unity and this league, he laid all these laws down, how to conduct a council in the interest of the future generations and today. And the PeaceMaker said, when he finished this, he said, I now place symbolically the great tree of peace. This tree shall be so great, its principles, its symbolism will be so great, that it will pierce the sky. And its branches will be so spread out, that beneath the branches of the great tree of peace will be created a great shade. And in the coolness of this shade, the men of the nations, the people of the nations will sit in peace. At the base of this great tree, he said there are 4 white roots that causes this tree to live and to have power. One root goes to the north, one to the east, one to the south, and one to the west. And it'll be a white roots, for it will be easily seen by all people. Anyone who has become sick of war and strife and sorrow, anyone who seeks the goodness of peace and humanity, they shall follow these roots, for the roots goes to the 4 corners of the world. And they shall follow these roots to its source in Onondaga, where the tree was planted. And there they will make their minds known of their desire to live in peace and unity. And there they will join the men of peace in the shade, in the coolness of that shade of the great tree. He said, I now place on the top of this great tree the great eagle. For the great eagle has a keen eyes than any other living, can see for miles away. And in his greatness, he shall be the guardian spirit bird of our people. If any danger should come to this great tree and its people, to bring harm or injury, it will be that great eagle that will see them approaching, and upon the sighting of evil or destructiveness will flap his wings and scream, thus warning the people who has took shelter in the shade of that great tree, and they shall prepare to safeguard that way of life of peace. And so the Creator said, now I place all the leaders of the different nations of the Haudenosaunee, the 5 nations now known as 6 nations, 50 leaders in all, 9 for the Mohawks, 9 for the Oneidas, 14 for the Onondagas, 10 for the Cayugas, 8 for the Senecas, in all 50. He said, now that I have planted this great tree of peace, all the leaders, 50 in all, will hold hands together, clasped very tightly, in a circle around the great tree. All the leaders will be of equal height, all of the same power. None will be higher than the other. or less than the other. You will hold hands around in a circle around the great tree of peace to protect this tree and that way of life. Within your clasped hands and within that sacred circle will be your people, your women, your children. Within there will be your languages, will be your understanding, will be your world. You must always protect your people in the ways of peace. He said before he left, that peacemaker, upon establishing this great things, there will be a day will come when there will be a people that will arrive here. It is a foreign people. They will approach this great tree and they will have in their hands a hatchet, an axe. And they will, upon seeing these white roots of this great tree, they will begin to hack at the roots to try to destroy the great tree and its symbolism and its way of life. But when these culprits have turned away from their evil deed and they run, the supernatural will happen to them. For the Creator is all-knowing of these things. And as those culprits run away from their evil deeds, the supernatural will occur, and blood will come from their eyes, their nose, and their mouth, and their ears. And they shall not go far. The tree will fall one day, but you, the leaders, who have clasped your hands in a circle around the sacred tree, when that tree falls, it will not hit the ground, for it will land on the clasped hands and arms of the leaders. And one day, it will come to pass where the power will be again. You will raise that sacred tree back up again. One more time, it'll be strong. Thus he said, now I give you this great laws, this great way of life, of humanity. I place it in you, your hands, the Haudenosaunee. I have taught you now. Now I shall leave. And I place this great way of being in your hands to protect and maintain for the sake of peace for the rest of time. One day will come, he said, when he said there will be a few left, because we will be attacked in many ways. A time will come when the people's minds will be mixed up. A time will come when it will appear that the heads of our people is removed from their bodies and stained with blood rolling around in a corner, and their other body is in the other corner. That is the state of confusion that will be seen. Children will cry because they will be wasting away. The elders, the parents, will not attend to their duties. And our young will suffer, and they will cry with misery. When things come that bad, he said, then you will go to the depth of the forest that you will find, and you will perform a certain rituals. And you shall call my name 3 times as you cry, and I shall return. That is why we was told not to say his name until that time comes. And so the peacemaker wrapped himself up in a bark of a tree. Under the ground he was placed. He said, now continue this great law, this great way of life. That is what we are, the Mohawk Nation, the Oneida Nation, the Onondaga Nation, the Cayuga Nation, the Seneca Nation. We are that. Those knowledges is still possessed by those of our people who love the way of peace. Our nations were established by the Creator's will. In our Creator's nations, we will protect it to the best of our abilities. In a way, that's what this camp is really about. Our way of life. Now, I'm going to start. In this way of life, there was no money. Everybody shared. Everybody shared. The clan, each producing leaders, represented many hundreds of people. Many families became known as extended families. Many extended families became known as the nations. And many nations became known as more even greater extended families in the League of Nations of the Haudenosaunee. 5 Nations or Iroquois in English. Everything was shared. And the ways of life there, it says, when you live, the food belongs to everybody. It is wrong to sell it. It is wrong. The Creator planned it for everybody. You must share food. When a guest comes, you must give him food. Land, there was no such thing the way we ever knew amongst the Haudenosaunee people. No private property nowhere. The land belongs to the future generations. We that live in are only the custodians, the caretakers for the next generation and the next. That is why we must defend in any way possible that this Mother Earth is always held for the future generations so that they may live as we are living. Those days, there was no private property. There was no such thing as gathering wealth for individuals. Everything belonged to everybody because we was all created equally by the Creator, and everything of natural things belonged to everybody equally. Now I will go into more contemporary times. I will start about 1492. For what I have been talking about occurred 1,000 and maybe 2,000 years ago. When the European first arrived here, we understand that the man was lost. He miscalculated his navigation. He was going to India, but he got lost somewhere on the big water, and he ended up over here in Western Hemisphere. The thing you call Western Hemisphere, North and South America. He thought he landed in India, but he landed here. So that's why he called us Indians. We are not Indians by rights. We are the people of this land. Lakota, Haudenosaunee, Seminole, Cheyenne, that's what we are. In our own tongue we call န့တွיןˋˋdyé, the pure people. That's what we are. And so the big mistake that Europe made was never corrected, even till today. Europe and the United States call us Indians. They never correct their mistakes. Well, Anyways, after that, when the men from Europe arrived in this shore, they were lost and they ran out of food. They were just skin and bones left. Some of them died as they were crossing. Sick, terribly sick. And when they come on the shore here, my people was watching from the land. They come out of the boat, they fell in the water. They had no more strength. And so my great-great-great-grandfathers seen them and they felt sorry. And as they seen them laying in that water, my great-grandfathers went over there and picked those Columbus people up like a small little baby, light as a feather. How sorrowful looking they was looking. And so they picked them up like that, and they give them food, give them medicine. Otherwise they would have drowned it in the shore of the salt water. Help them. Taught them. More came and more came. Finally, when they come over here, the European people, they liked it over here, what they seen. Beautiful country. Trees was bigger than you can put 2, 3, 10 men around in whole hands. Trees were big, going high into the sky. Everything was green. My grandfather used to say a squirrel could get on a tree right there by the Atlantic Ocean and jump off, go tree for tree, right clear to the west. That's the way it was. The squirrel could do that. That's how beautiful it was. Food was abundant. There was deers, elks, moose, any kind of food you need. Berries everywhere, just carpeted this Mother Earth here. That's the way I know my grandfather said. Well, after a while, more Europeans arrived here. Pretty soon, the king over there in Europe, they want to control their people that came here. And when the first European came here, they used to call the different native people here King Philip, King Hendricks. Us people here in North America, we don't know what kings is, what queen is. We never had such things. Here we have our leaders is the servants of the people. Not no kings and no queens. But the first European documented history, they call our leaders king and queen, like what they know in Europe. That's the only thing they knew. Well, after a while, you heard about Boston Tea Party. The king wants the money from here and the riches. So pretty soon, the different European was helped by the Iroquois and the different natives here in North America and South America. They don't want to go back to Europe. They said, there's no freedom over there. We can't. Okay, this time I'm ready to start again. Now, this time I'm going to disperse with all the little technicalities of the history that I heard from our older people, because it takes a long time. And I know that people who will be watching this doesn't have much time anymore to hear things like this. So I'm going to jump now to the year of 1754. 1754. My great-grandfather, which I was fortunate to know him and to talk to him till I was about 10 or 12 years old before he passed away. And he used to always say 54. He didn't know how to say it right. He says 1754. He says, I don't want you to never to forget, he says, always remember. He says that in 1754, the European people wanted to unite together to fight against England and the European people so that they could be free. And they didn't know how to make a unity. They didn't know how to unite because they argued each other. And he says a lot of the time they was arguing about land, they were stealing from us. Who's going to get more? He said. And so that's why he says the European, they call them colonists, were arguing and bickering all the time, arguing over lands that didn't even belong to them. So there was a man named Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and a couple of other those guys, you know. And so they already know about the Haudenosaunee, the 5 nations at that time. So they sent a delegation to Onondaga, which is the capital of all the Haudenosaunee 5 nations. And they requested that our leaders or our representatives go to Albany to this meeting called the 1754 meeting. And so our leaders at that time went there. And my great-grandfather said, your great-great-great-grandfather was one of those delegations that went to Albany. And he said this now. They got there in this meeting place. And when they got there, he's standing up like that, your great-great-grandfather. And Benjamin was sitting there and Thomas was sitting there, listening. And he said he held his hand up like this. And there was a wampum hanging right to the floor with the symbols of the articles of the unity of the Haudenosaunee, the 5 nations, Iroquois. And he's pointing like this, explaining to Benjamin and Thomas Jefferson, people like that, how to make a government, how to make a freedom, how to unite the people, what leaders are. They're the servants of the people. And so, at that time, they listened. And Benjamin Franklin made a quotation. I don't remember the exact quotation he made word for word, but I can get the general drift of what he said in response to this 1754 meeting, I guess. He says, Benjamin Franklin, mind you, said this. He said, it's a strange wonder that a group of 5 or 6 savage nations could form such a perfect union when we, but a dozen or more of the civilized, can do likewise. That's what he said that time. That's Benjamin Franklin, supposed to be a well-known man. And so they began to learn. Then the seed was planted of the birth of what is now known throughout the world as the United States of America. The Iroquois plant the seed. Well, bear in mind now, at that time, and even today in 1980, you go in Europe, and as our uncle Ray Fadden up in Untitled says yet today, that time and even today there's still traces. There's no democracy over there, or that time there wasn't, and there still isn't. He said 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900. Even today, there's only the divine rights of king and queen. Mama dukes, papa dukes, barons, duchess, noblemen, slaves, serfs, and so on. That's not a democracy. Those kings and queens, noblemen, they're the ones. They're the controlling body. And the people are the servants to them. Even still, you see sometime on TV, when the queen comes around, everybody gets down and bows down and trying to kiss her foot or something. That isn't the way it's supposed to go at all. So when Europe arrived here, they got the first heavy dose of what freedom was about. And they're still staggering from that dose. Now I'm going to skip a little bit more history. There was a man in Rochester, New York, His name was Henry Morgan. He wasn't an anthropologist. I understand he was a lawyer. And he likes this Haudenosaunee people. And he asked questions, and he wrote a book. Beverly, can you find that book, that Haudenosaunee book, or the League of the Five Nations? They went all over Europe fast. By golly, it revolutionized Europe. Pretty soon they were revolting the people. Do away with kings and queens. Make more democratic way of life. And revolution went over the world when they heard this. Because before that, they have nothing to compare. What is good and what is not. What is better and what is the best. Revolutionized the world. And I'm going to tell you now, I heard by our older people that there was a man named, I think his name was Karl Marx. He studied that book, you know, Lewis Henry Morgan's book. And he based,
This one?
no,
The other
it's a
one's
thick,
not here.
no, okay. And so he based a new kind of a life. They call it, I think, a socialism or Marxism, upon the Iroquois knowledge. On the Iroquois knowledge. And so it's interesting to see us who are the Haudenosaunee that remains today. Benjamin and his group also base it on that, and they get a capitalist country. Karl Marx based it on the same thing. He gets another kind. And those two are the greatest enemies today. They despise each other and mistrust each other. I asked my grandfather one time, if they both studied our ways, how come they don't like each other's? He says this. He says, we, the Haudenosaunee, we're not an Americans and we're not a communism or Marxism. We're neither of those. We're Haudenosaunee, yet today. He says, but what happened, he said, is that the Europeans, they didn't adopt the whole thing in its entirety. They took only what they thought would benefit them, and the other duties and the other sacrifices that is needed for a true, continuous way of life that assures peace. It was too much of a sacrifice. They didn't include it. So they left it. They broke it. And they took the spiritual part out. And they kept only the law part, which was against nature to do that. Those people who do that will become lost. And there will come a point in the world where they will destroy each other's and the world. That's what happened. Now I ask him, how come the Russians and the Americans don't like each other? They're both the same kind of people. He says, I think they know each other. That's why they don't trust each other. He says that. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. I forgot. I believe it was a man named George Washington. I'm not sure if it was him or not, because there's oral tradition, I'm telling you. I didn't see it in a book anywhere, so I can't refer to get it exactly. It's an oral tradition. I think it was George Washington. See, when the PeaceMaker brought our law here, he gave us an examples. He says, he put one arrow and he broke the arrow. He says it's not strong. So the PeaceMaker, when he established the Haudenosaunee way of life, he took 5 arrows together and tied it tight. And then he tried to break it. He says it won't break. Unity is that great. That's what he established, that symbol. Then he gave us the sacred tobacco. Well, we had it before the PeaceMaker come, but he told us to use it, and use it with feeling. The sacred tobacco from the beginning of the world, that smoke will rise to the sky, so all the life of the universe will see that smoke. And all animals and all life will stop what they're doing as that smoke, the sacred smoke rises towards the universe. and they'll all listen. That tobacco is what you will use. The sacred tobacco grows about this big. And so, the eagle, he put it on top of the tree to watch the guardian spirit bird. So they told him in 1754 or somewhere around that time, maybe before that, because they had other meetings besides that. And I think it was George Washington. He asked the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee people, if he could borrow these symbols. And so he borrowed the symbols, but they said they're going to return it back to the Haudenosaunee, the 5 nations, and someday he will return those symbols. He just want to borrow it for now, so he can make a country strong in the government. That was United States. Today, we remember because George Washington's grandchildren makes this kind of paper. This is George Washington right here on the front. His great-grandchildren is called the people of the United States citizens. They did copy this, and if you will see right there, those symbols of the Iroquois, the great eagle, he's holding the arrows in his hand, and in the other hand, he's holding the sacred tobacco in his hand. So this is a history. We're still waiting yet for the United States to return those things and to renew the friendships of brothers, to brother, so that the future of the world can have peace. This is the evidence right here. Now, this time now, we made agreements called the 2-row wampum. I'm sorry I don't have one here to show you on that camera. But it says, and it was made in 1600, first with the Dutch, then with Britain, then with the United States. They all accepted. They said we will symbolize our relationship with a river. And on this river, first, European says to the Indian, we must make some kind of an agreement how to live together. This is a copy and a picture of it right here. It was made in 1600. The first agreement ever made with any native people here of this Western Hemisphere and European, right there. And it says this 2-row will be like on a river. But first Europeans said the nature of this agreement will be, we the European people is going to be the father, and you Indian people or native people is going to be the children's. And the Indian goes shake his head, he says, no, we can't do that because it's not fair. Because a father can reprimand his children anytime he wants to, and it's not equal.
Hello?
Then the European shook his head again and he said, well, how about if I be your uncle and you Indian people is going to be my nephew? And my great-grandfather says, no, because the uncle, like the father, can also reprimand his nephews anytime he wants to. So the Indian, he shake his head again, he says, I'll tell you what, let's be brothers. That way we are the same level. We are equal. And then too, they said, okay. So down the river they will go. And the Europeans said, I will have my vessel, my boat. And I will have my people in there. I will have my languages in there. I will have my beliefs in there. I will have everything about me in there. And the Indian says, all right, then I shall have my canoe. And I shall go on the same river. I'll have my people in there. My languages, my ways in there. And this canoe and vessel will go simultaneously, side by side, down the river. We are not to straddle 1 foot in the canoe and 1 foot in the vessel, like that. Because if the big wind shall come, the water should get rough and the boats will separate, and those that straddled will fall in and drown. There's a symbol to that. You either jump in one or the other. But as brothers, we will parallel down this river, each in our separate canoes and vessel.
Hello.
That's the first time they made it, see. Then there was also a pipe that was given, silver pipe, silver gold pipe, this big. They still got it here in another community. And on this pipe, there was a chain that went from the bowl of the pipe to the stem where you pull it with your mouth, the smoke. And the United States says, and so is Great Britain, and even the Dutch, they said this silver covenant chain will be the example of our friendship. The chain was strong together, can't be broken easily. But because it is silver, silver will tarnish easily. So periodically, your leaders and our leaders will sit together in council to polish this chain so that it will not be tarnished, so that it will always be bright and shiny and healthy. That means that any confusion between us that could cause us to become enemies will never be. Together, we hold together in friendship and in peace in the future. And the United States says, I will never jump into your canoe and steer your canoe. That means he will never make a law that will affect our people, his lives. My people said, we will never make a laws or to try to jump in your vessel and steer your vessel on this river. That means we will never make a law that will affect the lives of the people of the United States. But mutually together, we will respect each other's law. But we will meet together now and then to keep the chain polished, understanding, so that the two boats as they go on the river will always go parallel and with respect, like the chain. That's the promise the United States made. We will never bother your lands. And we never sold the land either that the United States has got today. They took it by crook, they took it by stealing, they took it by coercion, they took it by all the immoral, by all the illegal methods known to man, and the utmost degree of humility. Whatever they got was taken that way. But my people said when they asked for a place to stay where they could practice freedom of religion and practice freedom of living, you're welcome to share with us, but with the same understanding that we have. You may use the land what you need it, as far as the plow can go, to grow things for your children. But we did not give you the land. We only share it with you. That's the way we believe. But the United States people, even today, they gotta have a certain land that says it's my land and nobody else's. That's wrong. Today, talking about claims, land claims, the United States set up claims commission. They want us to take them to court so that they can pay us millions of dollars for the lands they think that they got now, they took from us. So they can have a clear conscience and they can show the world a receipt. Look at the Indians sold it, we paid them, it's in full. This is our country. That's never happened yet. And it will never happen, ever, because in our religious understanding of all Indian native people, we cannot sell 1 teaspoon of dirt of Mother Earth because that's our mother. We can only share. And if people doesn't want to share, then it'll never be right. It'll never be right. Now there are big cities all over. Big cities. And the people of the United States and the people of Canada have always tried to get a paper saying they paid us off for the land they got. But our people, because of our religious understanding, has never sold. The traditional, real leaders of the people have never sold. No matter what kind of treaty, no matter what kind of land agreement transaction paper that the United States will produce to the world's eyes, you will never see a signature of our traditional, real leaders of the Indian people on it, ever. You will see different individual Indians on there, and they got those on there, and I will make an equivalent illustration for people to understand now. If you went to New York City and you wanted to buy that whole city of New York City or the whole city of Chicago, then you were to go, let us say if Russia or China or Iran people was to go to Chicago or New York City, and they found the mayor of the city of New York City or the president, they don't want to sell it. They don't want to sell it, so then China or Russia goes to New York City slums or whatever and finds a wino. And he said, I have this big bottle of whiskey. I got 6 bottles of whiskey. If you sell me this New York City, I'll give you this 6 bottle of whiskey and some more money to buy more. And the old wino alcoholic signs, he sells New York City. And he gets the whiskey. Russia now has New York City. Now, that's the nature of all the treaties that was made right to this day. Just that way. Is that legal? Is that morally right? Is there anything righteous about it? It isn't. It's the most awfulest, humiliating thing practice that could ever be done. But that is the way the United States, whatever papers they got to any land claims in any of North America, is of that nature. And if they want to have a free conscience, then they better get together with the traditional leaders that remains today to find out how we're supposed to live together in friendship and in brotherhood and sharing. I believe their own religion says that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, and you should share everything together. So you see, that's what happened now here. I'll bring you now to 1980, this camp called ﷺ in Akwesasne. Our leaders could not be bought. No amount of money could buy them, because our base is spiritual base of the universe understanding. So the United States set out to plant or create a new leadership of whom would say yes. And so in all Indian nations across North America and Canada, there are elective systems that are Indians that was imposed by the United States. And most of these elected systems have forsaken their tradition, their spiritual understanding, and it is their signatures that you see on land transactions, not the real. It was impositions of the United States to get what they want. All illegal. They used schools to take our children in Carlisle to readjust our understanding in American way of understanding. That didn't work. All kinds of things, programs of assimilation have been tried, but it still doesn't work. Now the newest thing, they call it pluralism. Now they think my people will get lost and forget and hand over the country to them, and their conscience will be clear. Never. It will never work. General Sullivan under George Washington tried to wipe out all our people through a smallpox disease, germ warfare. Almost succeeded. Burnt down our villages, and it wasn't successful. Missionaries, institutions, and this thing here cannot buy all of our people. This is 1980. And the fact that my people are still here and still remember their principles and their understanding is one of the newest, the oldest, and in the future, greatest miracles. The fact that after all these suppressions, oppressions, and impositions, the traditional Indian remains. It's a miracle. It really is a miracle, equivalent to any miracle that ever took place in the world. That's all I have to say. Oh, don't forget. Now, this is only a small, general discussion. A lot has been left out, a lot, because of time. But to the people who watches this, and the people who can embrace the truth and feel comfortable with it, and those that are a little bit shaky doing that, if you, the citizens of the United States, wishes to be truthful, then I suggest that you put pressure on the President of the United States and his Congress to deal with the traditional leaders again, as it was dictated in the two-row wampum agreement of the 1600s, 1700s. Because the world is in danger now. North America is in danger now. Because we helped Benjamin and Thomas to make the United States be born. And now 1980, there's still a lot of things left. We can still help a lot, but we cannot do it if people don't want to listen, if people wishes to throw away the principles of peace and unity and brotherhood. It cannot be done. If people is interested in brotherhood, if people is interested in the next generation and the next generation as the native people are, then it can be done. So that's all I have to say.